This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Well, he's going to find them all over the place. He's eventually going to come back to America, and boy, there's a whole new world here. He's going to sign up for the World Wrestling Federation. And he says in his book, he saw the writing on the wall when Vince had Hulk Hogan and Cyndi Lauper do an angle together, and he knew that the quote unquote war was already over. So Funk's going to debut in June of '85 for the WWF. Do you think it was a big blow to the NWA or Mid-South or the territory guys for Terry Funk to sort of join the evil empire here?
Maybe internally to some degree. Do I think anybody ever approached Terry and said, "What are you doing to your NWA legacy?" No. Terry didn't do anything, Conrad, that anybody on any promoter's roster would not have done.
Right.
The hot kid in town was McMahon's revitalized WWF, and there was going to be opportunity there, big houses. Again, most of the monies you're going to earn are going to be, now WWF had a good plan as far as royalties as it's evolved. I got a royalty check just the other day.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, man. I probably got to buy a couple of new cars. No kidding. I did 8 more Rolexes and I get a boot job from my girlfriend.
By the way, if you'd have bought those 8 Rolexes this time last year, they'd be double in value. So not always a bad buy.
Really?
Oh, dude, it is bananas what's happened during the pandemic to watch prices. It's freaking crazy.
I got one, and I practice what I preach.
It's worth more than what you paid for it right now.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That'll be something else I can leave my heirs.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, it was the obvious thing to do. These guys are independent contractors. You got to go where the money is. If you're a Cowboy, I can guarantee Cowboy didn't give a shit because Terry is going for the payday.
Right.
And I can assure you that if Watts had been in Terry's position, didn't own a territory, was still active and all this other stuff, he'd have wanted to do the same thing. You want to travel to where the cash is. You do that every day selling mortgages.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just no different. So, but some of the guys, just to make a good show or to make a good stand or impression, would say, "Oh, I can't believe he did that to us." Bullshit. You guys can't even fucking agree to where to go to have lunch. So who gives a shit? And that's what it was. That's what it became. It wasn't that fluid. When you mentioned earlier about it being the deal, the big deal, the NWA title, and it was. And I'm still a big fan of the NWA and NWA title. But I don't think anybody would have said shit with a mouthful, quite frankly, with regarding this particular topic.
Chat me up about what the World Wrestling Federation did to the Funks in terms of they changed their presentation. You start to see Terry bring out a branding iron. He's in his full cowboy attire, but he's also going to bring out a branding iron, use that as one of his gimmicks, which I get. But they're also going to rename his brother Dory, and they're going to call him Hoss Funk, a former NWA World Champion. We're going to change his name. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to add another Funk brother that isn't even a Funk brother, Jimmy Jack Funk. In hindsight, somebody who grew up on the Funks, what'd you think of that?
Didn't like it. Didn't see any need for it. But again, Vince is very adamant about owning his intellectual property.
Yeah.
And Walt Disney did. The guy that voiced over Mickey Mouse didn't own Mickey Mouse. Walt Disney owned Mickey Mouse. And because he could always get another guy to voice a cartoon. And so that's in Disney's world. So Vince has always traveled that same path. I want to own my own intellectual property. Somebody said, "Does Vince own the nickname, or does he own JR?" I said, "No, he only owns vowels. A, E, I, O, and U, you dumb fuck. No, he doesn't own my name." So as a result, I didn't like the Hoss Funk. I could see it relating, but but because they're from Texas, that's what they got saddled with. Why do you think I've been wearing a black hat forever? Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That's why. And in the beginning, I didn't like it because there's something else to carry on the road. at the end. But now, all these years later, I don't feel right if I don't have my hat on when I'm working.
Right.
So no, I didn't like it, but I like the fact both those guys are getting booked, and they were bringing some of their own style and some of their own fundamental soundness to the presentation, which I always endorse.
Let's mention some highlights for him here. He's going to main event Madison Square Garden in September of 1985. Even for a territory guy, it's got to be a big deal to main event MSG, does it not?
Yeah, hell yeah. For all of us that got to work there, I can't tell you how excited I was first time I did a show in the Garden. I'd seen the Garden on TV on numerous occasions, whether it be the Knicks or, hockey, the Rangers, concerts. So to actually walk in those hallways in the locker room area and all those pictures are hanging on the wall of talents that work there, not just wrestling talents. Matter of fact, the Muhammad Ali's, the Beatles, all these things. Here's this old fat kid from Oklahoma is going to sit at ringside and broadcast a show from Madison Square Garden. It was a huge thrill. And I can only imagine when you work the West Texas territory, understanding that they didn't have major, huge arenas. It was a cool deal. You're a performer. The world's most famous arena is that for everybody. So I'm sure he was jacked to the gills on that deal.
Yeah, he's going to go 3.5 minutes with JYD, and then he's going to be on the very first pay-per-view, but he loses by count out in 25 seconds to Moondog Spot. And the rumor and innuendo at the time was Funk wasn't being pushed or featured. And supposedly it's because Vince thought this was another way of proving that the WWF product was superior to the NWA product. And sometimes when I bring things like that up to Bruce in a more modern context, like, oh, you bring this guy over from WCW and what do? First thing out, you beat him. Do you really think that's part of Vince's personality? I want to prove, yeah, I know I got this guy under contract. Yeah, I know I'm paying him money. But we've also heard, hey, I want to beat him and see what his attitude is like, or I want to make sure the fans know that we're the superior product. And a lot of fans were even sort of throwing the flag a few years ago at WrestleMania when Sting finally had his WrestleMania moment and Triple H beat him. What say you? Do you think Vince, even back then, had more of an axe to grind with the NWA?
I don't know if the axe as much as he wanted to make sure everybody knew that that McMahon's brand was a superior brand in pro wrestling. And one way you do that is you bring in these established stars and you beat their ass with one of your guys.
Right.
So I think it was a little personal, but I can also see the business acumen in that regard to make sure that whatever you do, you always establish the fact that your brand is the top brand, and that more often than not, hey, look, we did the same damn thing on this, the angle, what was it called? When the WCW guys,
The invasion.
The what?
The invasion.
The invasion. Yeah. It's evaded my thought process because it was so blotched. And one of the reasons that it was blotched was the fact that what we're talking about right now, the other guys didn't have a frigging chance. Because, the invasion guys. And it also wasn't like it was the most star-studded invasion lineup, but it was the best we could put together because a lot of the stars didn't want to work. They were getting paid guaranteed money for sitting on their ass. Can't knock that. They've been working, they're bumped, they're tired, they're older, they're healing, and they're making huge money for walking out to the mailbox. And there ain't nothing better in this world than mailbox money, Conrad. I promise you.
Well, it's not going to be too much longer, and Terry's had enough. Terry wrote in his book that the travel was just too much for him, which we hear a lot about the schedule back in those days. And that one morning his alarm went off at 6 a.m. and Jimmy Hart, his manager at the time, wakes up and asks Terry where he's going. And Terry responds something like, Jimmy, you caught me. I can't take it anymore. I'm going home, going back to my girls. if there is one criticism of Terry Funk, it feels like maybe the only thing you could circle back to is perhaps he doesn't always give the best notice.
Yeah. Well, he was a true independent contractor. He got burned out. Simple as that. He had burned out on the travel. He got burned out on the fact that his push had been lessened. And so he saw the handwriting on the wall, was going to cut his losses before they got too stacked up. And he walked. I'm not advocating that, but that's the way that Terry played the game. And he knew that it was time for him to go. What was he going to do? Stick around for another few weeks so he could do more jobs?
Right.
So he just helped facilitate their decision for WWE, WWF, whatever it was at that time, and to cut his losses and move on. He knew he wouldn't have an issue getting booked, and he didn't.